And welcome in everybody for week number 1 of the Summit City Sports Report Roundtable. Last week we did a little preview show with the guys that were out at the games for the opening week of high school football. We had 7 different games that were broadcast on Summit City Sports, and we're going to start with Hunter Sosenheimer. Hunter, who's got a soccer match to start up here in a little bit. But Hunter, you had the privilege of seeing Southside open up the season with a big W when they took down the Marion Giants in overtime. A big win there, 27-21. And excuse me, no, actually that was the win for Marion, but still an exciting game. Just take us through that one.
Yeah, it was back and forth all game long, pretty much. Team would score, and then the next drive, Marion would score. It was just a back and forth game all game long. The quarterback situation, I think Southside is still trying to figure that out. They started with Alexander as the quarterback, the sophomore QB that played a majority of last year. He ran the ball quite a bit, and then they turned to the junior quarterback and Robert Murphy, and he was mainly their throwing quarterback. He did a tremendous job getting the ball through the air, gave that game-winning or the game-tying touchdown there in the fourth quarter to TJ Snow. Was a tremendous pass that was featured. He was actually featured in the game night this week from Jake the Snake Smith. So it was a tremendous ball there from Murphy. Josiah Malone had a big game too as well, 2 TD runs for the Archers. And then defensively, Dietrich Smith had a tremendous game. Interception, came up with quite a few tackles there for Southside. And Silas Forte, he wasn't mentioned a lot in the preseason of this year. He got a lot of touches in the backfield and had a tremendous game defensively as well for South.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hunter, he got mentioned a lot on your broadcast because I rewatched it, and yeah, they were definitely giving him the rock a bunch. What were your thoughts on JT Timberlake Johnson, the safety, also a member of the basketball team, but he really seemed to be flying around making a lot of plays for the Archers?
Oh, yeah, he looked like a ball hawk out there. Wherever the football was, he was either there to make a tackle or going to be the next guy to try to make a hit for them. He was a tremendous job on the defensive backs there for South.
And then Jovan Irby was a freshman last year that really jumped off the screen at people. Just an outstanding football player. How did Irby do in that game?
Irby did all right. He came off a little bit rusty to begin the contest, but as he got his touches, him and Josiah Malone pretty much carried the way in the backfield there for South.
And then up next, the Archers are going to travel to South Bend St. Joe. I know last year there was a lot of optimism heading into that game at Southside. South Bend St. Joe ended up getting the 41-3 victory. But what was your sense of the team and maybe their confidence level, just how they interacted with each other? Were spirits high on the sideline for Southside? What were some of your impressions?
Yeah, absolutely. As that game went into the overtime period, when it got to the end and it was a 21-14 game, Marion had the lead. You could tell on the south sideline there was a lot of confidence in them. And I actually think they're going to be a really, really surprising team here in the SAC this year. I think they're gonna win some games and they're going to compete very, very high in the SAC.
Anybody else with a question for Hunter on a Southside game? Okay, we're going to move on. Hunter, thanks so much for joining us. We know you're super busy getting ready for the opening kickoff there at Chambers Field. So enjoy it. Have a great game tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, up next, we're going to look at the Warren Central and Snyder game. It was Dub C getting the 15-0 win over the Panthers. The first time Snyder's been shut out since 2013. But Tim, you and I were in attendance calling that game, and I don't feel like that's any knock on Snyder. I thought Snyder looked pretty good on Friday, actually.
Yeah, I think Snyder. Most clubs against that Warren Central defense in the state of Indiana are going to struggle. Whether you have a new quarterback or a new running back, experience that defense for Warren Central in the 11, 12 years at Summit City Sports. I don't remember a lot of defenses that were that stout, both running and throwing, rush defense and the pass defense. was absolutely next level. Of course, everybody talks about the top player in the state, and Damian Shanklin, and also JJ Finch in that junior class. That's the top player in the junior class. Marcus Bell, outstanding senior, number 34 for Warren Central, was all over the field. We noticed him a lot in that ball game on defense and on offense. But for Snyder, there's a lot of things to be happy with how your defense played. This Snyder defense may be one of the better Snyder defenses they've had in some time, which saying a lot for head coach Kurt Tittman and his defensive squads over the past several years. Led by Brandon Logan, Landon Fry, sophomore, and Braylon Fertil. Adam Blakey had an outstanding ball game on defense. He was all over the place. And kids, you need to go watch his film and watch how he attacks the blockers. He is off the edge, the shoulder of every blocker. He makes sure his angles are right. Even on when he didn't get a sack or a tackle for a loss, he was putting pressure on whether it be Rivers or Dennison, the two quarterbacks that played at Warren Central in that game against Snyder. Snyder's going to be just fine. Everybody's got to just relax a little bit. Warren Central is that good. They are extremely good. Jeff and I were talking about just watching them warm up. They look like a college team as they're warming up, and then we saw it on the field as well. And it's not only those top level players. They had a couple sophomores. I don't remember his name. They had a sophomore that came off his man on a trip set. He was covering the inside guy, came off his route because he read the quarterback, made contact with the receiver right as it happened. And I believe it was Armonte Jackson that got the interception off his deflection. It's not only the juniors and seniors. Warren Central has some outstanding sophomores as well. But we saw good things with the Snyder offense as well. I think the line held up as well as you expected it to be with not a lot of returners. And they played decent against that front loaded defense for Warren Central. Trevor Jarvis did a nice job. You saw a little bit of Fry and Logan in a Wildcat. I think you may see a little bit more of that. Aaron Vance in his play action game is something to build on. He is a wizard with coming and hiding the ball on those play actions. He's got some speed as well. We've seen him, wiggle out of some contact with a lot of those big linemen that he ended up making positive plays on. So, people need to be a little bit easy on Snyder. They're going to be all right, and I think you're going to see it in the East Noble game this coming week.
Yeah, pretty deceptive speed there for Vance. He does go about 6'2", so he's very long, and he's got really good leg drive with his legs. And how about Landon Fry, Tim? He now leads the area with 2 interceptions, but really picking off where he left off last year, and throughout his career with Snyder, he's really got an eye or a nose for the football.
Yeah, him and Brandon Logan both just always seem to be in the right place. But Landon Fry at that middle linebacker spot, he was there on that tipped ball that he picked off, and then he sat in the zone on his second pick and read the quarterback's eyes. It wasn't an overthrown pass, but as a inside linebacker, you got to be in the right position, and that's where Landon Fry is. Not only that, he's sideline to sideline tackler. He don't stop. He is kind of like how Marcus Bell we saw for Warren Central is like Landon Fry. Landon Fry is even a little bit bigger, but he looked stout out there. He's one of the top inside linebackers in the state, in my opinion. And I think he's only going to progress as this season goes on. This kid is an absolute stud. The one person we didn't mention, Jamarion Calabote, had an outstanding game. He had that one where the defense knocked it away. Snyder had their chances. They had that deep ball that was knocked away right at the last minute. He caught a beautiful ball on the opposite sideline from Aaron Vance that jump-started some things. But yeah, Landon Fry is a difference maker, and you're going to see him double-digit tackles. He's going to have more than those 2 interceptions. I can guarantee you that. Landon Fry is a Indiana high school football player that just happens to be committed to D1 IU to play baseball.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tim. And just so you folks at home know, it was like this: hike 1,000, watch out. Yeah. That's how fast Aaron Vance had to get the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, there was no doubt about it. Snyder tried to use a little bit of screen plays as the game went on, a couple of quarterback draws, quarterback keepers, but he had zero time. I think you're going to see a better Aaron Vance as we go along as well, just because of that Warren Central defense. I don't even think I watch a little bit back on it on our tape, but it doesn't do justice watching them live. Watching them live, you see how big, athletic, and skilled, and not only that, very high Q under head coach Kirshner.
Yeah, no doubt. For those folks that maybe didn't get a chance to watch the game but are Notre Dame fans, think of Aaron Lynch from about 10, 15 years ago. That is what Jeremy Finch looks like, the #1 rated defensive end, defensive lineman, edge rusher in the junior class in the state of Indiana. Well, we're going to move on now to Landon Traylor, who is at Northrop hosting New Haven, the Bulldogs, and pulling off the 50-40 or 53-48 victory. Holy cow, it was a shootout over there at Spooler Stadium. And I don't know if many people were expecting to be as entertained as they were Friday night at Northrop. But Landon, take us through that one. How about the quarterback, David Callison, setting a new school record for 5 touchdown passes?
Yeah, Jeff, I really wasn't expecting that exciting of a matchup either. I mean, it was a touchdown after touchdown, big play after big play. I mean, the final score is 53-48 at halftime. It was 46-30 in favor of Northrop. Northrop ran out to a 53-30 lead actually in that ball game. Got a little sloppy at the end, I will say. Nothing too much to touch on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, obviously the score was 53-48. There's not much defense in that game at all. However, David Callison really surprised me. The junior quarterback with 5 touchdown passes, as well as unofficially 286 yards. And each one of those passes, it seemed like he would just dime after dime right there, either to Gabe Lewis or Jamari Brown. A quiet game from Guilford, in my opinion. I really was expecting to see him go off a little bit. It was a surprisingly quiet game. I think a highlight for New Haven is they kind of locked him down in a way, but forgot about the other 3 receivers that Northrop had as well. Jamari Brown also running a punt back. It was just an awesome offensive game. It was quite the fireworks show to open up the 2024 season, Jeff.
And just to get a correction here, did Gabe Lewis have the 2 touchdowns, or was that Guilford and Max Wheel?
I gotta say, I do believe it was Gabe Lewis on the first touchdown of the game. He was wide open down the sideline. It was number 11.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and Jamari Brown. Wow, we heard a lot about him heading into this season, and he literally looks like a Tyreek Hill type player, the human joystick out there on the field. I mean, he provided a lot of excitement.
Absolutely. That punt return is unlike anything I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, he took it. It looked like New Haven was going to gobble him up. They had traffic in front of him, and all of a sudden I look up after finding his name on my spot board, and he's already at the 10-yard line in the end zone and running, doing his little thing. So, yeah, he was fantastic to watch. The hype is real for the Northrop athletes. Schedule is going to get a little tougher in the SAC, so we'll see how they do. I'm excited for this Northrop team, though. I really am.
Well, what about New Haven? I mean, you could argue that New Haven lost so much and Northrop brought everything back. That New Haven was big underdogs in this game, but they stuck with them and made it really interesting towards the end of the game.
Absolutely, Jeff. They didn't give up. I mean, they were down by 23 points heading into the 4th quarter, I believe, and they didn't give up. They have a running back that wasn't even on the too deep depth chart, Navon Gibson. First snap of the game, he takes it and just bullies right through the defensive line of Northrop, and he did it all game long. I believe I said at one point in that ball game, is there going to be an answer for Navon Gibson? And then 2 drives later, I said, a couple drives ago, I asked this question. The answer is simple. No. A 61-yard touchdown just right through the defensive line into the secondary for New Haven. Kid's a bowling ball I'll tell you that. There's no stopping him once he gets past that defensive line. Even if he gets wrapped up by that defensive line, he keeps it rolling all the way, at least for another 5 yards. So a lot of positives on the offensive side for New Haven. The defense locked it up in the fourth quarter, I will say. So big test next week or this upcoming Friday against another tough opponent in Bishop Luers.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Luers, who just barely lost against Leo in what many people thought was the game of the week here in the Summit City. Okay, so Gibson, their marquee running back. It's not DJ Simpson, it's Gibson, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, a lot of fun to watch. Man, he is a throwback, you guys. Kind of reminds you of a miniature version of Jerome Bettis. Is that accurate, Landon?
Almost. I mean, we need to start coming up calling him the bus. I think I'm gonna break that out on Friday night. We'll have to see if he has a bus type of game.
Well, it seems like it would be appropriate. Well, another game we were at was over at Zollner Stadium, where Concordia got their first win of the season, 20-14 over Indianapolis Cecina. Cecina, who was 5-5 a year ago, 10-2 2 years ago, are going to start off this season 0-1. Joe Northern was at Zollner Stadium. Coach Manigal and crew got it done, but we saw a different quarterback than what we maybe thought originally we would see, and they did just fine.
And they did exactly just fine because Jack Andrews found a way to lock in, not only find, obviously, Avery Cook, which, if for those who do follow Avery Cook one way or another, knowing that he is the guy one way or another. And yes, he knocked in 2 touchdowns, 105 yards. We know that. But the way that Andrews was able to knock in and really try to find his offensive targets one way or another definitely helped out. Now, that being said, Andrews did have 2 deep sacks for 10 yards plus that definitely knocked him down a little bit. So that is the one thing that I am a little bit concerned about with Concordia is that Andrews has to find his targets, and he has to find them quickly. If he takes maybe a second or 2 longer, that's what's going to hurt Concordia Lutheran a little bit more on the season. But that also being said, Andrews to Cook, you're not going to find more of a dynamic duo in the SAC. And also, too, Noah Trent, you mentioned him on the Snyder broadcast last week, too, which, of course, we have to give a shout out to that, of course. But I can tell you that if you have a combination of quarterbacks in more so with Andrews trying to find receivers on the outside, yes, Cook's going to be the person to look for, but you have Noah Trent, you have Victor Sawyer, you have those 3 at the end of the day. It's going to take the load off Cook, and I think that's going to help the Cadets one way or another going really through the rest of the season. Now, granted, they do have a deeper SAC schedule, and taking a look at their schedule as it stands right now. So congratulations. Yes, you get a win against an Indianapolis school, but then guess what? You get other opponents deep on. You get Snyder coming up in week 3. So it's not going to be easy for the Cadets, but I think they are on the right track moving forward.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact Eastbrook, who's routinely a power in Class 2A, another tough opponent coming up for Concordia. But I got to tell you, looking at the stat sheet, you're wondering, you're kind of scratching your head a little bit here, Joe, because it really looks like Cecina would have gotten the win here, holding Concordia to -43 yards rushing. And that points to what you were talking about, taking those big sacks. Obviously, Cook with 105 yards receiving, Andrews 146 yards passing. But ultimately, it looks like Cecina outgained them by more than 100 yards. So what was the difference in that game?
I mean, really, the difference is just the play calling ability that we do see from Jack Andrews. And yes, you take a look at the -43 yards on the rushing attempt. He, of course, with him settling in, as you mentioned at the top, not everybody who they expected to settle in that quarterback position for the Cadets. But in the meantime, however, he found a way to get it done because he relied on his receivers, he relied on his rushers, and he found a way to get things done one way or another. If this was another game or another year, you'd take a look at the stats. Yes, Indianapolis Cecina would have blown them out 3 touchdowns. They did that last year against Concordia Lutheran. So But in the meantime, you also take a look at the tackles too, really spread out across the board. Tristan Brown also had a lot of carries, but if there was any man that gave Tristan Brown some fits, I should say, since he is a two-way player, it did have to come down. If you can scroll down just a little bit back on the tackles, if you don't mind. There you go. Grant Allman really gave that battle with Tristan Brown all night long and was a key player for Concordia to really try to set them in their place. But again, the long passes looking from Andrews, he was not afraid to really look for that aerial position one way or another in the match on Friday night. So I will say Andrews, he has the talent, but he has to really just kind of find a way to flick it and move on at the end of the day, rather than taking those deep sacks. Because if he takes those deep sacks, it's going to be a long year for Concordia. But that also being said, you end a streak that's nearly 22 months old at the end of the day, and you have that momentum going into week number 2.
Well, good to see Zach Spielman here leading the cadets with 7 tackles, coming off a great junior season that he had a year ago. So nonetheless, happy to see Concordia get the first win, start off the season 1-0. Well, over, I should say, up in Kendallville, East Noble handled business against Bremen, getting a big victory. East Noble with their first-year head coach, Alex Stewart, winning it 42-6 in Carson's backyard up there. What a great atmosphere always in East Noble. But Carson, were you as impressed with the starting quarterback, Riley Biddle, as I was during the summer 7-on-7 exhibitions?
Absolutely, Jeff. He came out and, the energy was palpable. You saw a lot of people. I mean, East Noble knows how to pack the stands, Jeff, to say the least. So big people there, new head coach, new quarterback. You weren't sure what you were going to see. And to East Noble's credit, they didn't start off very well. They gave up a huge run to Carson Anderson. He was just trucking them down the field. They scored a touchdown after Biddle threw an interception on his first drive. And you're starting to wonder, the nerves getting to them. Are they not quite ready as we thought they would be? And you're starting to think that they go into the second quarter. It's 14-6. They start kind of inching ahead, and then they just go on and run, and they score 42 unanswered. We end the game with a running clock. I was just really impressed. East Noble the whole night, from down to down. They had players jumping around, hugging each other. They were doing celebrations. I've always said, let the kids play. It's a kids game. I love the energy. I love the passion from East Noble. And I know Tim said we shouldn't be worried about Snyder, but if I was Snyder, I'd be a little bit worried about East Noble. Even with, Riley Biddle, as often is the quarterback, is going to get a lot of the credit. Those running backs are bulldogs, man. I tell you, especially I'm the original founding member of the Dylan Crail fan club. This dude is a wrecking ball. He will get right through your defensive line, and then he'll get through your linebackers, and he'll outrun your safety, and then he'll go back and hand the football to the ref and go celebrate on the sidelines. That's incredible. He's been doing it for years now.
I'm not saying you weren't the first member, Carson, but I think I did create the Dylan Krell fan club.
Okay.
No, but he's outstanding. That. Only took 9 carries for him to accumulate 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. So definitely a touchdown maker is Krell. So Riley Biddle started off the game with an interception. Was that his very first pass attempt?
It was the second pass attempt. First one was they did. I noticed one thing, and I like it for getting a young quarterback acclimated. A lot of screen passes. Think of like a Kyle Shanahan-esque system. I know we're dropping a lot of NFL references tonight. A lot of short passes, a lot of swings outside, and you lean on that running game, open the field up for him. He got a really impressive, about 25-yard touchdown pass late in the third quarter. Put him over the top to get that running clock. It was a bullet, and I think once you start getting the running game going, you can open up that play action. And this offense could be really scary, Jeff.
Dallas Plattner led the team with 11 carries. Did not hear that name a whole lot last year. What were your thoughts on number 2?
Yeah, Plattner was impressive, Jeff, just like you said. And I did a lot of their games last year with Jim. And like you said, he's just a sophomore. I was expecting a lot more Crail. Crail is a both sides player, as a lot of players are on East Noble, so he kind of got those first couple carries, and they had a running back by committee, and I was just really impressed with Plattner. Kind of the same thing, a little bit smaller of a guy, only a sophomore, but he's got speed and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I love that. And he was getting through that defensive line. Needs a little bit more speed to beat out them safeties, but if he can start picking up chunk plays, and like I said, if you open up that passing game, you don't know what's going to happen for the Knights this year.
Couple different guys going both ways over here. I mean, we know Dylan Krell from that linebacker position, 7 tackles, a tackle for a loss, but along with Dallas, Logan Hatton's out there going both ways. Logan tied for a team high with 8 tackles along with Kobe Ritchie. Ritchie also had 3 tackles for a loss. Holy cow. Let's just start with Hatton. How impressed were you with Logan Hatton? Oh, looks like we lost Carson. Carson, you got us back?
I'm back.
Yeah, Logan Hatton, your impressions, another 2-way player.
Yeah, sorry about that. He was really impressive as well. Really liked what he was doing in coverage, especially. Like you said, he was just, like I said, the passing game was really being supported by the run game, but a lot of really impressive plays from that team.
Okay. So, yeah, now East Noble travels over to Snyder. Snyder starting off the season with 3 straight home games-ish at Wayne Stadium, one of them. But so you're thinking that East Noble now has a legit shot here against the Panthers. We were thinking the same thing last year. East Noble came out and drubbed Lures 45-7, then took the 45-28 loss against the eventual Class 5A state champs. You think that could be a little bit tighter this year?
Oh, absolutely. And I think another year of improvement. And like I said, we'll just have to see. You never know. Competition is competition. And I think Snyder's going to be hungry. And like what Tim said, some people are doubting Snyder, but a chance, absolutely. I mean, East Noble, if they run the ball like that, if the system starts to elevate a little bit and Biddle can get that ball out, I think that's East Noble has a legitimate chance to shock the Allen County.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be our first game in the 260 where we just have kind of a packed stadium over there. It's going to be interesting to see how East Noble travels for that game. And yes, Snyder never feels good about a loss, especially one where they get shut out for the first time in over 10 years. But East Noble's very, very good. And just like Snyder, East Noble has very strong leadership in the locker room as well. So that's always going to help. Well, Thad Goff went to Monroeville Heritage High School for the opener for the Patriots. Their brand new first-year coach got the dub 46-7 over Belmont. Wow, what a way to start the season there for Heritage. They get breaking in a new quarterback. Thad, what were your thoughts on that game Friday night?
Well, there was definitely a few things in particular about Eli Tagulis that were very impressive to me. He had the arm strength. That's not a tell-all sign, but that's a good quality for any quarterback, and we saw it on several of his touchdown passes, particularly one of them where he hit Braden Walter. But on that touchdown pass to Braden Walter, the one where he hit him on the deep pass, Walter had beaten his man, had beaten his cornerback just by a little bit. It wasn't like he was 10 yards downfield to go with the Tyreek Hill reference. It wasn't like he was wide open out in space. But Tagulis showed some good touch on that pass, led the receiver, and Walter was able to make the catch, and that turned into a touchdown. So the arm strength was certainly there. But one thing that also impressed me about Eli Tagulis, his first completion of that game was on a 3rd down, a 3rd and 9. So passing situation, you would think, and it did turn into a passing situation. And Tagulis, he stood back there in that pocket, and he threw a good ball up to big Zeke Litchfield down the sidelines, and Litchfield, big 6'6" tight end, went up and made the catch. Tagulis put it in a good place and got the first down out of that, and that eventually led to a touchdown. Another thing that worked real well for Heritage was their running game. I thought coming in that maybe they might lean a lot on C.J. Barnett. Barnett was the most experienced of the running backs, at least from last year, that they brought back. He was teammates with Kobe Meyer, who was the quarterback, was the leading rusher. So I thought C.J. Barnett was probably going to be the feature back in that offense. They start Nasir Martin, and Nasir Martin was impressive. This is a guy who's quick. He's got good vision. He can hit the hole. He can find the hole, and came up with a couple of big touchdown runs, including another third down touchdown run. That was 3rd and 4, but they lean on him. They trust that offensive line to create the holes for Nasir Martin, and Nasir did not disappoint. That was a great running performance by him. I think it was like 75 yards or maybe somewhere around 82 yards, 10.3 yards per carry. So, and 2 touchdowns, of course, but an impressive game for Nasir Martin at the running back position.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns to lead the team. Barnett had a touchdown as well. Lucas Weber had 3 carries, averaging 21.7 yards per carry. Sounds like a home run hitter.
Yeah, Lucas Weber seemed like a pretty big guy, but when they gave him the football, he was able to churn out some big gains for them, and only got the 3 carries. But when he had the rock in his hands, he made it happen.
Well, always nice for head coach Jeremy Hollinger starting off his career at Heritage with a win. Looking at Belmont there under head coach Nick Hall, who's in his 5th year. Did you think that there were some things that Belmont did really well out there, or are they just going to scrap this one, regroup, and get ready for South Adams?
Well, I think they'll definitely regroup and get ready for South Adams. I think Belmont. One thing that they showed me, they had a real good kick return after one of Heritage's touchdowns set up a red zone opportunity, and they took advantage of that. However, one issue they ran into is that they were moving the ball, but a lot of times they ran into some pretty good defensive penetration on the part of Heritage. Especially, I'd say the best defensive player in that game had to be Abbott, number 9.
Oh wow! For both teams.
Yeah, for both teams. Mason Abbott. He was in the backfield constantly. Got an interception, 3 tackles for loss, as I recall. But he probably was the most impactful defensive player, at least for Heritage, in that game. You know, Easton Curtis was a quarterback for Belmont. He was able to make some good throws. I do think that there's definitely some development to be had for Curtis. And this is a guy who, as I recall, only threw 2 passes all of last year. So there's definitely some development to be had. But who knows? This kid could certainly grow into one of the better players in the area by the time this year's over, by the time next year's over.
All right. And then Thad, you got a game this Friday. You're going to be calling this one by yourself. It's Riley, South Bend Riley, going over to Wayne, who did get the win at Crispus Attucks. That was an overtime W. And boy, there were some fireworks. There were some stats being produced in that game that really turned some people's heads when you look at Kemar Nelson. But, heading into that game, we all kind of thought for sure that Trey was going to be the starting quarterback, Trey Dillard. And it looks like Coach Haydock ended up going with the sophomore there. But what were you able to gather from that big win at Crispus Attucks?
Well, from what I can gather, Wayne definitely had some good rushers, particularly Kemar Nelson, 5.1 yards per carry. Lennis Martin, 6.3 yards per carry. Not used quite as much, but he was effective when he carried the rock. Here's an interesting thing. Harold Mack, a wide receiver, 7 carries, 90 yards. You want to get the ball in his hands. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's used to being a wide receiver, and he can make a lot of things happen at the wide receiver position. Now, maybe that goes back to the young quarterback, Trey McCraney, 5 for 17 passing, just 38 yards, and maybe that's just part of the learning curve as far as McCraney is concerned. But it's kind of interesting. They may have, and I'm not sure exactly what that was, whether Harold Mack was taking snaps out of the Wildcat or maybe he was being used on jet sweeps. Maybe it was a combination of both. But Wayne found ways to move the football on the ground, and even though they gave up 34 points in that game, had a lot of guys make some big plays defensively. Nelson, you talked about him earlier, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Lennis Martin, 2 sacks. Jaden Bushy adds another sack. Bravion Query, he adds a half a sack, along with another kid, Jermichael Lovelace Robinson. They combined for half a sack. So definitely Wayne had plenty of playmakers in that game, even though the scoreboard at the end of the day shows 34 points. So this is a Wayne defense that can definitely get it done. It's just a question of what's the score going to look like. They'll have playmakers. They'll get in the backfield. They'll make the sacks, but they're likely going to go against some resilient offenses, and I think that was the case with Crispus Attucks. Crispus Attucks, as I recall, had a lot of guys back from last year, a lot of good, talented playmakers, and so same way. I think they bring back their quarterback, Austin White, from last year, leading passer. They may have some new faces at running back, but they should be very good, very stout as far as the passing game is concerned. So Wayne's going to be tested on Friday night. I think they're up for the test, but it's definitely going to be a challenge with South Bend Riley coming in.
Yeah, Riley coming off an 8-2 season, getting the dub 35-0 over Hammond Knoll to open the season. So it's going to be a good time getting out to Wayne Stadium to see the Generals in person. And we know when you look at Wayne and we talk about the sophomore quarterback, Trey McCraney, I believe that's the grandson to Sherwood Haydock. So we wish them all the best as they continue to get that position figured out. Tim, you're going to be at Northside for the Lawrence North at Northside game, and Northside shocked some, maybe not this guy right here, but shocked some by getting the win 32-20 at Northridge. Boy, the Legends have a lot of talent all over the place, Tim.
Yep.
You even mentioned that last Friday during the broadcast.
Yeah, they are weapons galore under head coach B.J. Johnson out there at Chambers Field. Tristan Newsom, that was the question mark, moving him from DB to be their starting quarterback. Well, all he did was absolutely produce. 12 of 16 for 205 yards, 2 TDs throwing. And also, hey, let's give him 15 carries for 132 yards and another 2 touchdowns. Outstanding job by Tristan Newsom. And that backfield is loaded. The sophomore, Caleb Kingley. Jeff and I have been talking about him since his 8th grade year, even 7th grade year. Jeff coached him out at Northwood for a little bit. But Caleb Kingley, 211 yards on 28 rushes with the touchdown to go along with Newsom. I was just reading a stat for Northside that head coach Ben Johnson just put out. Total yards that they had, it was over 500 yards. Found it somewhere.
Yeah,
There
the
it is.
337 rushing, 205 passing.
542 yards of total offense. And, of course, head coach Johnson's going out on Twitter and making sure his offensive linemen are getting pub for that as well. They got an outstanding young lineman. They missed Jordan King, of course, but they have regrouped on that offensive line. James Early Jr. had himself a day on defense. But before we get to that receiving, Malik Moore, that outstanding sophomore, 70 yards. Pearson had 77 yards. Both of them had a pair of touchdowns. Gibson, a senior. They threw it around to quite some different players. Then you're looking at that defense. James Early had 6 solo tackles, 9 total tackles, 3 assists, of course, 2 tackles for a loss. 28th ranked player now, Jeff, is James Early Jr. on that defensive line for head coach Johnson, who we'll get to talk to a little bit later tonight. Outstanding players they have there for head coach Johnson. I think, you miss Tay, of course. He's a once-in-a-generational type of player. Unfortunately, battled a lot of injuries at Northside. So hopefully if all these kids can stay healthy for Northside, they can really do some damage coming up in this Summit Athletic Conference. But Lawrence North is not an easy squad to deal with. They opened up with a 33-26 win against Lawrence Central last Friday night. They have some outstanding talent, a couple of top-ranked players. They got an IU commit as one of their receivers, and Chandler. He had 112 yards receiving and a touchdown. He's ranked 10th in the senior class right now. Very talented kid. They also have a defensive player that's committed to Maryland. He's a 23rd ranked player in the class, and Smith. It's going to be an exciting night. It'll be the whole first home game at Chambers Field under the turf, on the turf. I expect the Northside faithful to come out in force at Chambers Field with the 1-0 record to start this season.
I'd agree with you on that one, Tim. Yeah, exciting players. You know, when you look at a guy like Malik Moore or Caleb Kingley, and then even the sophomore who we'll get to talk to Coach Johnson about, and that is Leslie Woodson,
Yes,
to pair up with James Early. Going to be an exciting year for Northside, obviously in the B division of the SAC, but this is a year where maybe more than one B team could compete for that A division championship. So that's going to be a fun one, Tim. We'll enjoy that game at Chambers Field. Now, Landon is going to be over at New Haven along with Joe Northern, but Lures traveling to New Haven. When I first saw this, I thought right away, oh, Lures is going to handle this one easily. That may not be the case.
You're right. I don't think that may be the case, Jeff. A lot of turnovers on the offensive side of the ball for Lures in week number 1. Now, granted, they were playing a top team in Leo. Leo is a phenomenal team. Let's not take anything away from Leo, but 3 interceptions for Bishop Lures on Friday night, along with a fumble. That's 4 turnovers that, quite frankly, if you even just take one of those away, you might have yourself a win in the win column here to start off the year. But 4 turnovers on week 1, it'll happen. I think they're going to come ready to play, though. It should be a really good one. I really hope that I'm a big defense guy. I really hope we see some defense being played, because last Friday was just it made me sick to watch. Just big play after big play. It was sickening. But I really do hope that it is defensive based, because Bishop Lures brought their A game defensively, forcing 3 interceptions of their own against Leo on Friday night. So they're going to have to bring it. New Haven's going to have to bring their defense. Didn't see much of it on Friday, but it is week 1 after all, on the road. So I think New Haven will be fired up. First home game. I believe they got a football stadium renovation that is completed a few years back. It was pretty cool. So it should be rocking. It'll be my first time there since the renovation. So the place will be rocking, I think, first home game of the season. And Bishop Lures got to fix the turnovers. New Haven got to fix the defense. Should be in for a fun one on Friday.
Yeah, we don't have the stats for New Haven yet, but yeah, I will say that was probably the number one thing looking at the stats from Lures that surprised me was in the passing game. So 3 interceptions, 85 yards passing, going against that tough Leo defense. You got shot on the defensive line, putting pressure on opposing QBs like a Warren Central D-line would. And then in the backfield, Landon Hepner leading the troops back there. So once again, Lures kept themselves in that game, easily could have pulled off the win. Instead, lost it 20-17 after Leo scoring a 4th quarter go-ahead touchdown. So Landon enjoyed that game over there at New Haven. And then East Noble at Snyder. Jaron, who's got a volleyball match right now, couldn't join us. Hunter, who's actually calling his soccer match right now. But East Noble at Snyder. Do you guys have any thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I'll start. I think Snyder's defense is like I said earlier, is one of the best Snyder defenses I've seen in a decade. They are outstanding sideline to sideline. They held some very talented players to not a lot on defense, or while they were on defense. But you're right, East Noble showed that they could score the rock. So we'll see what it comes down to. I think it's going to come down to the Snyder defense and holding East Noble down. I like Snyder in that game to rebalance. And to be honest with you, Jeff, we talked a little bit about it after the game. I could see Snyder running the table with that talent. That defense is extremely good. They just got outshone by a college level type of defense in Warren Central. I like Snyder in it, but I would not be surprised if East Noble makes a run on that. I think it will be a close game.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to chime in?
Absolutely. I think it might be a game of the year candidate already. Carson had mentioned the place is going to be rocking. It's going to be jumping. No doubt about it. If that place isn't sold out, somebody messed up somewhere. So it should be a really good game. Game of the year candidate, in my opinion, it should be. So looking forward to watching that one on my iPad while I got New Haven Bishop Lures going at New Haven High School on Friday night. But yeah, I'm really excited to see the Snyder defense against the East Noble offense, like Tim said.
Yeah.
Can Snyder stop East Noble is what it's going to come down to essentially.
Yeah, we did get a comment here that Plattner is a senior, so we do apologize there. But Taylor at Blackhawk, Carson, I know we kind of switched that over to you late, but Blackhawk Christian in their second year in the program's history as far as 11-man football goes. They did play some 7-man football and did a great job, but they're going to be playing their home games at Zollner Stadium, and they opened up the season with a 39-6 loss at Bluffton. Bluffton has really turned around that program over there under their head coach, Brent Kunkel, who's in his 8th year. But Carson, what were your initial thoughts when we switched over to that game?
Yeah, I just got a chance to look at John Harrell. I got to actually, my best friend Ryan actually is the sports editor for the Bluffton News Banner. So I read up a little bit on the game from him this morning. It's nice to have him be able to do that for me. So, yeah, Taylor was the only win they had last year against Blackhawk Christian. That's my first impression. There was a 33-0 blowout. And Jeff, when you switched me over, I was just thinking like, man, it was that October day. Jeff and I drove down to pretty much Cincinnati to that 7-on-7 tournament. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but it was. So crazy. Yeah, so I'm just really, I'm still trying to see. We're still learning a lot about Blackhawk Christian as a football program. And, I mean, you talk about being in the beginning stages. I'm really excited to see what they can do, how they can bounce back and build upon. Like I said, they lost 33-0 there last year. They're still ironing out the kinks, but every day is an opportunity to get better, Jeff.
Well, thank the Lord for head coach Bryce Bennett and his boys, because there's another Bennett for Blackhawk. Chip Bennett, the sophomore quarterback, completed 5 of 12 for 156 with a touchdown and an INT. Remember, folks, this is against Bluffton. Bluffton, who very easily last year could have been an ACAC champion. I mean, yeah, the Adams Central game, that tough one to win there, but they nearly picked up the win against Heritage at Heritage. Their only 2 losses during the regular season before losing to Lures in the sectional. But this is a very established, tough Bluffton team. And honestly, Blackhawk looked like they did pretty well. Gage Bennett still on the team here now. He's a senior. So we'll see if they can get that rushing attack going against Taylor. Well, folks, one of the interesting things I wanted to add was, being over there at Warren Central with their plethora of statewide and nationally ranked players. But I don't know how you felt, Tim. I really got the sense that if you were going to pick one kid to start your team of all the players we saw on that field, you'd probably be going with Brandon Logan.
Yeah, Brandon Logan can do everything. We heard Coach Tippmann talk about it on our interview last week. I expect him to get a little bit more offensive reps as the season progresses. But he had a fumble recovery, sideline to sideline. He reads the offense so well on defense and put himself in the right positions. Brandon Logan is one of those 2-star. He's actually a 3-star athlete. With baseball, football, and track. The kid is outstanding. He can also play some basketball as well. Don't dunk on me. He is a tremendous all-around athlete and one heck of a kid. The number 1 jersey for Snyder High School is not handed out willy-nilly. It is a lot of thought in that number 1 jersey for Snyder, and it means everything to the coaching staff, the players, and the alumni. And Brandon Logan represents that very well. I expect him to have a monster year this year. Him and his best guy, Landon Fry, which we talked about earlier. Brandon Logan is a difference maker. You're going to see it the rest of this season as we continue on. But he's just one of those special once in generational type of players. It's crazy. The more we've been around this, Jeff, since we started Summit City Sports, seems like we're saying that more and more often now. Where we got to probably change it, not once in a generation, maybe once in every 3-4 years. We're getting these type of players and athletes in the city of Fort Wayne. Brandon Logan is right at the top with what we've seen over the past 12 years.
Yeah, 100% agree with that one right there. And for the folks that are on Facebook watching, just let you know, you can comment. We can take questions on the show. We can even show your comments right there. And Ivo Bryant, I'm hoping that's Ivory Bryant, the great running back from Harding, back from when we were in high school, Tim. One heck of a running back that went on to Northern Illinois to continue his career. And Landon, I saw you flash the Notre Dame emblem there. You know, the more you watch Brandon Logan carry himself and just play the sport, you really got to believe that he's going to be a starter and a key contributor for that Notre Dame football team sooner than later. Is that what you're thinking?
I do. To be honest with you, Al Golden, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, one of the top of the country, he's going to fit right in that defense for sure. So no doubt about it. I do believe he will be starting for Notre Dame. Al Golden doesn't mess around when they don't just offer anybody. And so when they offer them, when they offer Brandon Logan to come from Vanderbilt to play 2 sports at the University of Notre Dame, this kid's special. You know it's special when he decommits from one of the top baseball to go play at a top football university. He will be starting for sure. Almost like a Drew Tranquil, kind of starting his very first year at Notre Dame. So,
Drew, wow, what a career Drew Tranquil had and still is having in the NFL. Yeah. That's a guy that has battled more adversity as far as the injuries are concerned than maybe almost anybody that you'll find in the league. So any last thoughts, any last questions from our roundtable group? Well, everybody, that's Landon Traylor, Tim Atkinson, Carson Watkins, and Thad Goff. We're all going to be out on Friday night bringing you guys the action. We really appreciate you tuning in and supporting Summit City Sports and our community. And remember, you can always post a comment and we'll try to get you on the show as we'll be doing this all year long. Well, guys, thanks so much. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. My name's Jeff Mahoney, and we'll have another Summit City Sports Roundtable next Monday at 7 p.m. Thanks again, everybody.
See you guys.